Hey, I always said I was gonna get around to doing this, and finally I am. Let's take a look at Father Moo's modular, what's in it, and why. Before I go through it module by module, I just want to start with what was I trying to build when I started this machine. Well, first of all, I wanted to make Game Boy type sounds. I wasn't necessarily going for a pure analog signal path, so we'll see how I tried to address that concern later. Another thing I was trying to do was I was trying to make digital reggae in the pole vein, so you won't be surprised to find that there's quite a few delay units in the system. Another thing I wanted to do was to make ambient music, which meant another oscillator choice is aimed at that, and some other modules have that goal in mind. And finally, I wanted to make sure I could do generative stuff, meaning rather than programming the synth and telling it exactly what to do, I wanted it to improvise on its own semi-randomly. So we'll see how well I achieved or didn't achieve any of these goals. Even more crazily, when I was partway through building it, I decided to throw in some drums as well, which may have been asking 3 units of modular to do too much, but we'll have to make that decision later. So, in many ways, the synth is older in terms of what's up and to the left, so let's start in the top left corner. First of all, we got Braids, which is a very well-known and popular digital oscillator. That's the one on the far left, the bigger one. In many ways, that's the main or primary voice of this system. We can take a brief and hopefully not too annoying listen to its sounds here. What you heard there was me just playing Braids directly into the output. You heard every time I turned the top right knob and the letters on the screen changed, the model of oscillator also changed. And those bottom left and bottom right, the green and pinkish knobs are just like parameter 1 and parameter 2 for whatever mode you're in. Some of the advantages of Braids are, number 1, you can reduce the bit rate of the output from 16 down to 4. So again, with video game sounds, that was an advantage. And also, you can even automate the changing between the modes, which means you get a very unusual, unpredictable sound, which is good for generative. And in the last sound you heard, you can see it's now saying WTX4. That means wavetable times 4. It can even play a chord, which is why you heard me at the very end of that sound segment. I was twiggling the pink knob and it was changing different kinds of chords. So, especially when I was building this, that was very difficult to get out of one module. So I thought it was a big advantage. Right next to it is the second voice in the system. It's hard to read it here. It's that little thin purple one with 2 silver knobs. Its name is Ataraxic Translatron, but really it's just a video game only sound source. Let's listen to that. So some pretty harsh lo-fi waves there. It's a little bit of a frustrating one to tune. If you try to switch between the modes while it's playing, it may drift out of tune. But if you leave it in one mode and that mode is on pitch, it should be able to work in tune with the Braids. So actually what you're seeing here for the first 3 modules is kind of my main voice. If I go from this out to this in, this is my first VCA. My first is an attack decay envelope and a VCA. And I can send my second voice from here into here, and this is the second voice. There's no filter in that setup. I might use a filter later on, but if I want to start with tones, I can start in the top left corner, plug those two modules into the third one. The third one's called the double Andor, and I'm already there. Double Andor is a good one, made by the Harvest Man. Now is known as Industrial Music Electronics. This is the version 2 of this module. I got it on sale even though it was new, and I was very, very happy to get it. And I'm a huge fan of the Harvest Man. If I could build a system of only one type of modules, it'd probably be his. So those three, as I said, are off of my starting point. There's a little one in the middle there. This one is called the Little Drummer Boy. The Little Drummer Boy is a bunch of inputs here and one output, and each of them is a different sound. So if you send it in here, you get an analog hi-hat, claps, rim shot, snare, kick drum. It's just so small, and it was cheap, and the thing I regret about buying it is that you can't do anything to change those sounds. All you can do is trigger them, and they appear at the output. Their volumes are set to balance each other, but that means the hi-hats are quite quiet, and if you play them by themselves, you'll get a quite quiet output. But I looked at the amount of space, and I said, wow, I can add 8 analog drum hits to my system just with that, and I went for it. Another very old module here is the first delay we've seen. It's called the Sound of Shadows. For me, this is a cool part of synth history. Before we had Eurorack, there was a website on the internet of a guy who built a synth called the Catgirl synth, which is a sort of homemade, partially DIY, partially experimental synth. Many of the people who would later become Eurorack developers would learn from the Catgirl synth's designs, which he posted, the circuit, arrays for everyone to read and download. So he took an old delay chip, I think it was aimed at a karaoke machine, and it's a digital delay, and he had something that wouldn't have looked anything like this, but one of the fans of the Catgirl synth took his design and built it into this Euro module. The delays, inputs, and outputs are here, and because he had a bit of space left and a bit of processing power, he put another VCA in here. So this was also quite an affordable module. If you look at the settings it has now, when the delay is around this speed setting and this normal mix, you can get like a single slapback echo. But if you twist this one to the left, the delay eventually breaks down into very, very odd noises. I love it. I think the single most similar thing on the market today would be the Korg Monotron delay, which is a famously lo-fi delay, very crunchy. If you wanted to sound like this, you could modify one of those and stick it in your system. Or you could go to the Catgirl Synth website and build your own like this guy did. In between, just to the next in the line here, that colorful little thin module is the rotating clock divider. It's pretty simple. You put a clock in here and it gives you the same clock, half that speed, and so on down. It's useful for getting the modules to work in time. I use it in probably almost every patch. We had this drum module, so a bit later, again, chronologically I built most of it this way, not all of it, but most of it. This is a bass drum model. It has 5 knobs to allow you to adjust the sound. This is an amazing sound. I remember I went to a gathering with one of my buddies at a synth shop here in Taipei. Everybody plugged their systems into the PA, and suddenly there was this huge booming sound, and everyone's like, what the hell is that? And it turned out to be this little kick drum, which was pitched way down and had a long decay, like an 808 kick, and it was making this massive sound. And everyone's like, whoa, what the hell is that? So we had to take a look. So where this one gives you almost no control over the drum sound, this one gives you a ton of control. So at least for kicks, which are useful in so many genres, I can adjust it to something listenable. Here we have a very utilitarian module, the mixer from Tip Top. It's just 4 inputs with knobs to 1 out. and then you can link that to here, and then you can send 4 inputs, and this one controls the level of those 4, and get another out. So you can have up to 8 ins through 1 or 2 outs if you want them. I also use this in every patch that has more than one tone. It's really my main and only mixer for audio signals. I think it can do CV, but I never really use it for that. Finally, I was running out of power plugs, so I put in this. Is called 2 HP trim. Basically, these are like a mount. If you have an LFO in here and the LFO doesn't have its own amount knob, you can reduce or increase the amount, and then you have an output, just a utility, and the one beside it with the lights is the power source for this happy ending kit. If you look at the whole system, these are actually 2 different happy endings kits, which were just very cheap available models at the time. Many people's starter unit, and I got a hard case and screwed the 2 of them into it to give them a permanent home and to make it airplane capable. So we're already over 10 minutes. That was the top level. I'm going to go on and talk about the next 2 levels of the synth in other videos. Cheers.